There we go. All right, so everyone just, here we go. And just FYI, we are being recorded. But the last bit, I like to leave us on a note of inspiration, a spiritual perspective. And so I know one of the topics on feminism, and when we get to that last little leg of enrichment from that perspective, I think it may be something of interest there. But we have a lot of theories that you have an opportunity to write on this week. But before we do that, did anyone have any questions on last week's coursework? Anything? Have a question or concerns? Anyone? Okay, well, I'm going to take that everyone did well. By the way, I want to thank one of your class members, Tammy. Thank you again for, and I think it was one other, Will, I think it may have been you or Maria, that it's like, it had to do with, okay, I don't see my paper in the grades, you know, or the completion of it. Well, I apologize. It was an oversight of mine. I thought after I finished the grading for discussions for last week that I had released them. And when I look back, it had the little bar that indicated that, oh, no wonder they're asking about the grades. So hopefully everyone got their grades. This is my input before we move into this week, and very insightful. Truth and truths, the information you had even regarding your discussions on faith and theory as I'm getting ready to move into grading those, and hopefully we'll try and get those out as quickly as I can. By the way, I'm going to try and get your papers done between tonight and tomorrow, because I really want you to have that so that you'll be prepared. Anything that you think you can fine tune for your last paper for next week. I think what I'm going to do, if it's all right with you all too, is we're going to just see if there's any questions on this week, and then I want to have time to discuss next week, module 7. Now, I might not have, and I typically don't have another Zoom after tonight, because I really want everyone to have full attention to being able to write and complete their work. It will be tight as far as when the submission is, because I have to meet the deadline to get all the grades in, you know, after the 14th. I only have maybe 48 hours and then getting them to the administration. But I would like to go over that a little bit so that you have some anticipation of what to expect. And I know that some have some other additional challenges, be it medical. And by the way, we need to remember our peers and one another in prayer. This is probably one of the first classes I've had that it's been a number of students and your peers that have experienced some kind of medical, mostly medical, or family emergencies or other incidents that have been an interruption in being able to stay full focus on the coursework. So I just want us to remember them. Some hospitalizations, some major surgeries. So just remember that we need each other, and I really am a proponent of prayer. So encourage you to join me in that, and I'm going to leave that to where you are in your spiritual life. I always want to respect wherever you all are in your prospective lives. So that said, one of the wrap-ups, and I want you to be mindful of it as you're wrapping up the final inputs to your discussions for this week that you'll be doing on analyzing your current event. The discussion threads and your primary threads, all of you on here tonight, matter of fact, I've read everyone, but I know for sure, because I'm getting to know some of you, especially coming here and our one-on-ones or emails, the content of what you've provided, and I can say, because you all are here, that your initial posts that you have provided to your teams have been wonderful. They've been very well thought through, they're organized, you've identified, not necessarily like you will your paper, but we're responding to what the topic is, and then you're able to provide like truth and truths. This is how it impacts me, this is the theory, and you've been supporting it with the references and great citations. You're doing it by defending. You're not only making a statement, but then defending it. Now, for interestingly though, a majority of the class students have responded when you have your response where you're responding to your peers and one another, and then you're also getting a critique from your peers. Those have been pretty much almost liquidated. So don't forget, I want those to be as rich and robust as your initial one. Now, like I said, I know 2 or 3 in particular. And when I open up and I come to those, your papers, it's like, oh, I know I'm not going to have a problem with this one, because it's, and even your previous work, that I'm prepared and willing, and it's like, what are they going to write on today? Or what are they talking about today? And it's very rigorous, it's thorough, it's in depth. You're challenging your other members and class members that are not here with us in the group tonight, but perhaps seeing this on the recording later. This goes for you all too, that you have to be able to just really not just say, oh, that was great, what you mentioned on Aristotle's rhetoric. You really did well to talk about, you know, the ethos, the logos, and the various, you know, maybe one or, it was great what you said, but tell them what part in particular. You may say, you did a wonderful job presenting this, and I particularly like XYZ. But then you may look at it as perhaps as I do grading your papers, and state perhaps something you saw that that wasn't limited. And it's like, well, you mentioned this about, you know, this particular element of the theory or assumption, but what about this one? What was your thinking on that? Or they may make a statement, but they may not be as thorough as you anticipate. And so therefore you may say, well, you made the statement, but how could you support that? What is it that you can further tell me that, you know, it's also giving them a challenge, that the opportunity to let the group know, I know what I'm talking about. So just be mindful of that. And last, even if this is one citation, especially when you're responding, not necessarily first, but your second and third input on the rubric, if it's just one reference, please be sure and have that on every post that's there. Otherwise, a fraction of points. I mean, I'm not taking off a lot, not unless there's some papers and did great, but there was no reference in any of them. So that was maybe a 0.10 deduction or 0.5 deduction. You see what I'm saying? Okay, any questions on that? This week, I commend everybody. I'm speaking again, those that aren't on the Zoom, but in the class, everyone did well to give from where you were, the first paper that you've submitted in your reference page. Wonderful references, a nice, reasonable lineup. Again, that shows that, you know, there was effort and research, or even the work that you did as far as analysis, synthesizing, and comparing those theories. So this week we're going to talk about, we've got the mutic group theory, the media theory, social political theory, Marxism, feminism, classical liberalism and progressivism, and our wonderful, controversial, everybody that doesn't know anything about it in the news and whatever else talk about critical race theory. So any questions on this? Let me see if there was something else on the previous one I wanted to hit though. Okay. Yeah, I just want to move into this one because it is, as you all probably saw my little commentary that I put on the announcement, that this is probably the most controversial group, or can be, or debatable groups, especially some of the theories. Which ones do you think have been the most controversial or could be?
I'm going to guess critical race theory is probably one of the most controversial. After that, probably either Muted Group or Feminist Standpoint. One of those two would run a close second. I see Danielle shaking her head like, yeah.
Danielle, your thought on that? Let's talk about them.
I shied away. Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay. I have headphones in, so I just wanted to make sure. I actually shied away from all three of those because of the simple fact that I am working on this about myself, but I don't like controversy. Even if it's constructive back and forth, I still kind of get riled up. So I went to Marxism and that's the one I'm focusing on. And I really like it. And I found a pretty good example of it in the news lately. So I'm excited to see what everybody thinks about that one. Or the people in my group that can see it. But yeah, when it comes to race, it's a little touchy, of course, for a lot of people. And growing up, I was taught you don't talk you'll have certain conversations in public. So politics is one of them, race is another, religion. So with that, I just kind of pull back and I like to listen and observe and see other people's viewpoint before, giving mine, because I know I could be a little sensitive about how I feel.
Now, when you say,
oh, wow, interesting.
You said you steer away from controversy. And so you said, I picked Marxism, and Marxism can be pretty on the
yes.
People pack you up and send you out of the country. You're not a patriot. Now listen, wait, let me, and remember we're recording here, so just being mindful of that. But I want you to be in class. We also have our disclaimers too, that when we discuss things, this is part of our class. And so we need to be sensitive to one another, protect our communication. This is our class. So by the way, even these recordings, I make a major effort that they are not listed on Zoom. It is a private, and not unless you all, click and send it somewhere, it is specific to the class. And I don't know if it even would do that. So, but I just want you to be mindful that these discussions are valuable, and with dignity, respect, grace. We're in a climate, a time in history, time in society that it has surfaced. Danielle, that's interesting. I want to get back to what you're saying about your mother, but Marxism can be very touchy. And I think Tammy was sanctioning that by even socialism. There are some elements of it that leads to socialism / communism. And people, when you mention it, like the general a few weeks ago, he's one of our generals because I'm under federal and military, Department of Defense. He says, I want to learn about Marxism, but that doesn't make me a Marxist. I want to learn about, he used a Vietnamese communist person that's in history. He said, but that doesn't make me that person. And I will say, from a social science perspective and background, and my opportunity to be in conferences with other sociologists, American Sociological Association, they did a whole thing on Marxism last summer. And it was a lineup like any other conference. You couldn't go to San Francisco and be there a week, so they did it virtual. And Marxism was one of them, Danielle. And I'm going to be honest, if I can be a little transparent with you all in the class, I was a little bit reserved, I don't know about that. Am I going to be a bad person? But you know what? I wanted to be open like the general and say, the more I learn about it and understand it, the more I can be able at this time in our season of conflict and national conflict to be able to, if someone asks me, to be knowledgeable. I was pleasantly surprised because the discussion was not so much advocating Marxism, but the participants and those that presented their peer journal articles, researchers, they articulated how important it was to understand it so we would not fall into the events that related to Marxist, because Marxist theory says focuses around the haves, has-nots, you know, and diminishing others with, based on privilege. And so, but it was showing how society, certain social groups, social experiences, societal events, the caution that we could go down that road. But there's nothing wrong with studying it, you know? So I applaud you taking that, but I don't know about, I'm proud of you because you said you steer away from it. Huh, Tammy, Sonia, Maria. Let's give her kudos.
Yay.
So what else were you going to say? I cut you off there.
No, like you said, I find it really interesting. I find it interesting how, you know, we have this big division in society where the rich get rich, the poor get poor, and how everyone tries to come up with this plan to where we're all on even playing fields, but then nobody really wants to be there. So it's just very interesting how society tries to combat who we are and try to make us be something that we are, but we really don't really want to be that. It just sounds good. So
oh my goodness, that's so interesting. Yeah, that is so interesting that you say that we're going to aspire to be better and even equitable. But once you get an equability, then guess what? Someone in the group is going to say, I want more. I think that's a human component of us, you know, the raw humanity. I was talking to these were executive leaders this morning, and I told them, I said, you know, we've had conflict and just what you're talking about, where someone wanting more than another person. I was talking about negotiating and an equitable negotiation at the table where it's a win-win. And I said, but during even cave time, you had one guy may have had a stick that looked bigger than another one, just a simple rock. And then he may have had a piece of meat. I mean, we're talking very primitive. But guess what? He wanted that meat, even though that meat may have, the meat that he had that was less, that tasted really great, because he saw, or whatever his senses motivated him to say, he got a bigger piece of meat. Don't care what it looks like, but he grabbed it. And you know, if you think about children, I've not been around a lot of kids until the last few years because I've got a great niece and nephew, and then my coworkers have young children and they're toddlers. But it's so funny how at one point in their growth, when they become 2, 3, they start becoming protective, defensive. You know, they got a toy and it's the best toy, but then they get attention and they see another toddler having even a little toy, and you may be giving it to them and they'll come over and want that other toy. Give it to me. Wouldn't you all agree with that? Yeah.
You see it also with kids learning money when they start learning coins. In their mind, when they see a nickel, they know for sure it's bigger. It's the amount is greater than a dime. It's there. It's a smaller cent, it has to be a lower number. If it's a bigger cent, it has to be a higher number. And so, like, I have a 7-year-old, and we had to do coins, you know, for first grade, and he could not grasp that. But I tell you, he's a genius. He's very smart. But that stumped him. But it's just that his mind thinking something when it's small is a lower amount, it's big is a higher amount.
You know, it's funny, we're talking about children, and it seems like they are so in their minds advanced from what I recall. You know what I'm saying? Even my childhood, looking back, and it's like, did I act that way, or did we didn't act that way. We didn't have, I don't know if it's because of technology, what they're exposed to, if it's so bombarded with their senses being overwhelmed. But when I was growing up, it was marbles and dirt and creating something out of mud, you know, and stuff. But anyone else, I thank you for sharing that. So that's going to be one of your theories. Anyone else? Let's everybody kind of chime in. We're a small group, and
I'm going back between the muted group theory, feminist theory, and of course, I'm going back and forth with critical race theory. I just, it's something that I want to learn more about because it's so controversial now. Especially, in the state of Texas, our legislator passed that it's not going to be taught in schools. And so I've seen, news articles, clippings going both ways. And that's just something I want to learn more about, just how to apply it and how it affects schools. Because I work in education, so it's a personal thing for me.
So Sonia, I have to ask this. I'm in Texas. This is Tammy. You're an educator. What are your thoughts? This is personal. Do you think it should be taught or not?
Yeah, remember recorded. So whatever you choose to, I just want to
If you choose.
tonight that. So.
I think there's several certain tenets that need to be taught. We need to be aware of, just like we are aware of other events in history. We need to be aware of specific events in history that affect African Americans. I mean, as a blanket statement,
yeah,
that's kind of my perception. I want to know, when I learn about, Native Americans, like, for example, without knowing the contributions of Native Americans, kids grow up wanting to play, what is it? Cowboys and Indians.
Cowboys and Indians, yes.
But the Indians always want to get killed.
Yes.
Or no one wants to be an Indian because the Indian gets killed. Because they don't see anything else but the history of what happened to the Indians and what the Indians were supposed to do. They don't understand the other aspects of it until later down the line. And so just to understand all of it, that's important to me. Because if I was Native American growing up, I wouldn't be all that comfortable just learning about the slaughter of my people with really, that's just my opinion.
So I tend to think, and I know this is recorded, but I'll just say this. I think it should be taught. I think it should be taught, not just for African Americans or Indians, but Asians and all, because every race has made significant contributions. And it's not always recorded in the history books, right? And on a personal level, it has taken me being an adult traveling internationally, right, to understand the significant contributions African Americans have made, not just here, but abroad. Why? And so why can't our children know that now, so they are more aware? I think it produces more empathy, because I don't have any studies to prove it. But I think that, and excuse me, I shouldn't be on this bike while I'm doing this, but I think that it would make our kids more empathetic and understanding of other races. Other races would feel part of the majority. You wouldn't feel like you're silenced or like you're less than, because that is the environment I grew up in. You feel that because of the color of your skin, somehow you are less than because you're in school and all of the history books and everything else talk about the majority and the great, and how Christopher Columbus discovered this world and blah, 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 and go somewhere else, go to the Dominican Republic, and you will see that he really was not. And look at some of the historical things. He was not this wonderful man that history portrays him to be. So why can't our kids know that? That's just my position. I think we would be culturally, we would be more empathetic, more understanding, and much better educated. And I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm gonna stop and mute myself.
That's not a soapbox. And that's why I make the disclaimer that everyone's comments, be it here on Zoom tonight, in the discussions that you wrap up, that it's important that we have this conversation. We get to be change agents. on there. Oh, I thought you were emotional and you're out here exercising, Tammy. I'm glad you joined us. We get to see the body language. Anyone else on critical race? And I'll share something that I told the leadership that I had. It was one gentleman this afternoon. We were talking. I'm wrapping up an investigation, and have to do the review before I get it over to the lawyers for the total conclusion on it. But anyone else have? Maria, you're kind of quiet.
Oh, okay. No, I agree. I mean, I definitely want to learn more about it. But I agree, like with Tammy, I think the whole educational system needs to be revamped because there's so much diversity. And back then, for instance, for me being Mexican American, my parents, I guess it would be first generation, my parents were from Mexico. So I grew up speaking Spanish at home and learning English at school. And back then what we were taught, one example, and I still remember it, is information regarding Pancho Villa. And here in the books, they make him look like a villain, right? So I went home and told Dad, oh, this guy was a bad guy, this and that. And he's like, no, he wasn't. Maybe here, to the Americans, yes, but over there, he's like a hero. So we're kind of like, okay, we need to be told the truth, the history, not just the bad stuff, but what caused this, and because the majority, and this is being recorded, but the majority were, majority of the people that were writing the textbooks and all that were, white Americans. So we need to be, now that we have more of the minorities educated, that information needs to come forth so we get accurate history of everybody, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and especially, that, Christopher Columbus, and I know now they're starting to teach that he wasn't, a nice guy, he did very, very terrible things. So I think definitely there needs to be, I don't know how, but that needs to be, changed. There needs to be a change. And I think we're moving forward in that direction. We just have to be careful how we're doing it and everybody working together, but definitely there needs to be change.
Well, and that's why, again, I'm alluding to the reminder from maybe establish ground rules for this week that we must maintain dignity, respect, and I even add grace and compassion or empathy when we talk to one another. Ultimately, once we strip away labels, theories, where we've been, our differences, ethnic, national origin, gender, when we strip all of that away, elitism, economically, and I don't even want to say that, but economically satisfied, perhaps made it pinnacle, an Oprah, Jeff Bezos, Branson, kind of folks that if you have the money, you could have gone up in the spaceship with one of those guys. But then don't forget the ones that are over here that can't even have a meal. I remind myself, my mother, bless her heart, she's 90 years old. I'm blessed to have both my parents. I always brag on them. But she is 90 going on 19 and just a wonderful cook. And I told her if she was in a place like Texas, New Mexico, she could easily put, her first name is Estelle. And I said she could put a little marquee up and says Estelle's Cafe, and folks would be lined up like they're going to In-N-Out Burger. And guess what? It's good food that she makes. But anyway, I'm saying that so she always will sit down pretty routinely and will say, I could have done better on this. Oh, this happened. And then she forgot to put the foil on a casserole that's, we get our stuff, we have a Costco's out here, and they'll have the pre-made casseroles. Well, she never made an chicken Alfredo casserole. Forgot to put the foil on, so when she pulled it out, the whole top was baked brown. And so it was kind of crunchy. And she got to fussing, and I had to tell her, I says, Mom, we gotta be grateful that this is good. Because some people, and she was concerned we wouldn't like it. And I said, you know what? It is a meal. And we got more than some people don't have nothing. So don't worry about it and stuff. But that's those individuals that have to have the crumbs. So let me just share my insights on it. And I appreciate you sharing. Sonia, real quick, I want to hear from you. Your mic, just open your mic up.
About the critical race theory? You
Yes.
want to talk about that again?
Yes, just your insights real quick, because I'm gonna close on.
Oh, no, that's, I guess that's the one that I'm most interested in learning about, as I said a little earlier, just because it affects me. I have a 9-year-old son who's going to school. Last year, with everything going on in the midst of COVID, he expressed just a lot of unfairness and how can I say, just being singled out in his school. The area that we live in is, it's people that look like us don't typically live in the neighborhood, but it's becoming more and more diverse. But all the teachers, it's out of maybe 150 educators, it may be one Black teacher in the entire school. And so my son is a little Black boy with, I know it's being recorded, but I tried to stay quiet. My baby is a little Black boy with ADHD. However, he has an IQ of 132. You know what I'm saying? So he does get bored. He's not disruptive. He can be disruptive, but his disruptive is attention-seeking behaviors. And instead of them acknowledging that, because I'm an LSSP, so I've given accommodations and all that good stuff, they perceive his behavior as bad. For example, blurting out, typical for ADHD students, when they write it up to me, it's an emotional outburst. Two very different things when you look at the actual connotation of it. But that's how they'll write it, because that's how they perceive it. And so this last year, I've been living, just going through doing a lot of training with different districts in the Regional Force Educational Center for Implicit Bias, and trying to understand and teach that. But you can't teach that when it's a wall. And I believe the critical race theory is just another wall that's being put up so we don't acknowledge how it affects our kids today, in my opinion. I try to stay off of my soapbox because I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable, but I can be very passionate because it has affected my child, who is, learning who he is and what his importance is at school. Like another student called him and said told him that he had to be cheating or something because of getting the best grade on a reading test, because Black people don't do that. Black boys don't know anything. The teacher just said that wasn't nice, but didn't necessarily sit down and address it. However, I get a call, you know what I'm saying, when he yells at a kid, and it's I'm sorry, I'm be quiet. That's
No,
why.
let me say, okay, Sonia, as the mother of two black men, 26 and 27. I have experienced similar things. Number one, I don't think that you should fear making anyone feel uncomfortable. Number one, if you are speaking truth, I don't think you should fear making anyone feel uncomfortable. My kids went through the same ADHD thing. They're boys, I think gender has to be taken into account, right? But let me tell you this, you stick in there, you hang in there with them, because ADHD is not necessarily a negative thing. ADHD kids are high functioning and able to multitask. My oldest played college football in the Big Ten at the only private school in the Big Ten at Northwestern. Do you understand what I'm saying? Demanding football captain, and came out with an undergrad and a master's degree from Kellogg, one of the top business schools in the nation. So when I go back to that teacher that said the emotional outburst and ADHD and won't be quiet, how about you show me your Kellogg degree? Do you understand what I'm saying? So don't feel bad.
Yes, I mean, my son was even smart enough.
Let them label mine. I refuse. You will speak positively. You will, because I speak life into them, you will do it also. And I have had many conferences where I've had to move my kids out of classrooms because I do not like the tone in that manner. If you cannot speak life, not just into my child, but other children, my child doesn't need to be in your classroom.
And I even had it set up because, because I'm teaching my child how to advocate for himself, or, because I have to. And so I had, he kept the first semester last year, he kept coming home saying that he's not, his teacher didn't like him. I'm like, Grace, I'm sure the teachers like you, it's probably this, it's probably that. And then one time he said, not, and he said, Mom, you always take it for the teacher. You don't take it for me. I feel some kind of way because I'm an educator, right? And so, as automatically assume, okay, she's doing the best she can. Well, I'm like, okay, let me take a step back. So I contacted the teacher and she had attitude with me. And so I had to remind her what I did for a living, how much experience I have, and let her know how she will handle my child. I had to, but I tried to have a conversation with her. I gave her the benefit of the doubt throughout, and then I got slapped in the face, it seemed like.
Sit down.
Sorry, I'm gonna be quiet, Dr. James. It just, that's why I tried.
No, because let me tell you, and I've had to be there. Here are my expectations, with teachers in mind, that these are my expectations. This is how you will handle my kids. But at the same time, let me tell you, I am very involved. So tell me your expectations of me and my children, because it's going to be a mutual respect. And and I think you have to start that at a very early age. I did it in elementary school. Every time school started, hey, we're going to have a sit down. I want to meet with you. Let's talk about mutual expectations, because I am entrusting you with the care of my child. And that is not just his education, but you affect him emotionally and mentally as well. And I will not have you do anything less than breathe life into this child. Okay, so I'm gonna hush.
So
all of that is the reason I'm leaning toward the critical race theory. Or the muted group theory.
This is a valuable conversation because ADHD, and I wanted to kind of capture, we talked critical race, Marxism, all of these where if they're not looked upon, I don't know why people want to be negative about it. And I talked to Dr. Fleming even by, just our opportunity to share in an academic setting at ACU these topics. And we mutually have acknowledged that it is simply a theory and the ability to understand what has happened to people. Now, how it got demonized, that may be a strong word, so that what we're talking about, and perhaps even others that we haven't even seen surface by some groups, people. It's like I told the leadership, the executive this afternoon on my one-on-one with them, because we have a situation, and I'll be just very filtered with what I'm saying, but the gist of it, a leader, and the person, granted, wants to be spirited in their conversation, perhaps around tables. This last year, there's been organizations, and I know in particular the agency I work with, they want to be helpful to say, let's get the handle on this. It's been in the news, so you all know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking anything no one knows about. And back to our wonderful general, I can't think of his last name, but the chief of staff of the military, DOD. And he says, I want to learn about, as I mentioned earlier, Marxism, but that doesn't make me a Marxist. I want to learn about this Vietnamese communist individual, but that doesn't make me a communist. I want to learn about critical race theory. And if there is something that says that there's a white man is privileged, I'm aware what that is about, but that doesn't make me to be a racist or that I've done something, and it doesn't make it bad. So we have to keep an open mind, but back to this conversation I had, I could talk about it for another hour for that matter, but I know you guys are on Central Time and got to go to bed and get your homework done.
Girl, we got papers to write.
Well, hey, those papers, but this is what I told them. I'm trying to get it out because I'm real passionate about it. And I'm really impacted because I'm gonna be honest, I spent 8 years of doctorate research, PhD research, a huge bill that's Harvard. I have a Harvard, student responsibility in my tuition. That's two times going through Harvard if I wanted to, cost. And then I've got almost a 400-page dissertation, 300, I think, close to 300 page. And a big impetus of it is on critical race theory and some of these things we're talking about. So when I hear people say it's a terrible thing, and that's why I use the word demonizing, I'm feeling bad. It's like, does that make me am I a sinner? Did I lose my salvation somewhere? You gonna hang me up by my toes? Or are you gonna chase me out of town? And then I realized, especially the conversation today when it came up, and it's not been the first time, but it's us that become open-minded and knowledgeable. And back to what I was going to say, you have other individuals, on the other hand, that have no knowledge base about it. The last year, people got really threatened. I don't care where you were located, what office, organization, agency, country, but when we saw things in our cities burning and people did not understand that, and let me say this, and this is nothing, I'm not.
Stop.
Okay. Did you say?
No, go ahead. I was telling my dog to stop. He was getting on my iPad. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I think he just wanted to say hi.
Let's see the dog. The dog is good.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was saying now. But anyway, everybody wanted to try and help. And likened last year to Wall Street massacre. And then we had the Capitol. And then people trying to make distinctions uniquely different. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but just a matter of they're all likened of the same. Violence is violence, hatred is hatred, being harmful to one another, others, another human being to another, and not kind and compassionate. And I don't care who you are, who or what person, national origin, we all have the foundation of our humanity. I still say that we bleed, is any one of us. I don't care if you're white, yellow, purple, green, you may be a Martian. And Martians may not bleed, but you know what? We've got some real creative scientific things happening, and they bleed. Mammals bleed. That's the last I heard. So we need to take care of each other, number one. But I think that what occurred last year was so visceral and scary, and to see a man that another human being put his knee weight, 200-pound aperture weight, on another man's head, and you have a group of a diverse, it wasn't just Black people, but a witness, and they were respectful, stood back, respecting, but saying he can't breathe, he's starting to throw up, or whatever's happened. You had an EMT there, and they couldn't even intervene because of perhaps the fear, but they tried to say, you're killing him. And so the world saw that, and they had compassion foundationally. So I think that what stood up real quick, what we call in business tiger teams, and equal opportunity experts, leadership in the country, that says we need to get something out, especially I'm talking the government, a script, because people start saying, how do I talk to Black folks? How do I talk to white people? What if they don't like what I say? What if they don't like how it's said? I may say the wrong thing. I mean, what if they goes and kind of, Danielle, this is where I wanted to hold this, because you're saying we don't talk about that. And I don't know, Danielle, if it's just in the Black African-American community. Maria, I don't know if it's in the community of your ethnic background, but it has been said. I was kind of gasping, like, oh my goodness, because Danielle, I've heard it in our family. We don't talk about that. don't go there. And if you're with another people group, you know, and I don't know, I grew up between California, Colorado, Upper Peninsula, Canada. So those are all my cultures. I'm ethnically Black, brown, mixed race. My culture is white and Westerner, Midwest, and the Air Force. That's my background because that's what I've been infused with day in and day out. But so when I went to Tennessee to school, I had a culture shock because, you know, when I went to the Black church and I played the piano, it was my family church, but I played the piano too fast. They said, "Where'd you come from?" I'm Southern Baptist. And so white Southern Baptist for that. That's my upbringing. Sometimes the only one. But I was a pianist. So when they said, "We want you to play," they said, "Slow down. We can't breathe. We can't." I was singing Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. That's a different rhythm than good old Southern rural. Oh, precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on. Let me see. But I had them through, I was finished with Amazing Grace or Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. You see what I'm saying? And so when they told me to slow it down, and then they asked me to go to a dance, and I didn't dance right. I had the wrong music. I'm used to the Monkees and, you know, whoever else, you know, there was just others. And I really went through culture shock. So I'm just saying, but the impetus, even that I would ask questions to my family members, Tennessee, and they would say, "Well, we don't talk about that. We just go along with it. We don't want to make trouble," you know. Whereas out here, you know, open-minded and an open, you know what I'm saying, more diverse, military. Why did you all do that? Why won't you let them in? And we get a response. But in Tennessee, it's like, "We don't want to make waves. Oh, don't say nothing, but you'll get in trouble. You're a troublemaker." So I don't know if that comes from the historical narrative, the histrionics of our country. And Danielle, so I'm speaking from, because I know as being a member of the Black African American race, that's what I can say my upbringing experience aligns with what you shared, and I see a lot of head nodding. But be mindful, there are white Americans, I think, that probably, and I know it from my research, that has said, "We don't talk about that. You treat them nice, but don't talk about that." Or, "Don't use the N-word. Your friends have used the N-word, but don't you use that word." And the little white child may say, Caucasian child, "Mommy, why not? Johnny used it." "Oh, we don't talk about that." We have a lot to work through. It is layer upon layer of harm, trauma, and pain. And there's a wonderful book. I'll try and put it on with my link Zoom tonight, but it's called The Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. DeGrary. And it was one that was introduced to me during my research. And Dr. DeGrary advocates that it's not only Black people that had a harm because of the events of slavery, but the whole society. And guess what? I believe that's manifested itself to this day. So last year, let me get back to where I was going with this. There was a major effort with good intent to say, let's fix this. How do we talk to them? But this is what I'm going to advocate. Not anyone, just anyone off the street, not any Black person, not any white person can be given a script and say, "Go tell people this is how you're going to talk to somebody that's uniquely different." To tell them it's okay. We're going to have a forum and we're going to talk about what happened with George Floyd and how did that make you feel? And if you ask the questions, you better be ready for the answers, be it Black, white, Native American, Asian, Southeast Asian, Japanese, Middle Eastern, Jewish, Turkish, Hawaiian, you know, from all perspectives of that, Canadian. So we have people that opened up the can of worms and they had no knowledge of what they truly were equipped or the expertise to talk about. So like I told this gentleman this afternoon, and it's funny, I guess this is how the Lord works, the Spirit works, and we're sitting here at this setting. I told him the same thing because he has a commander that is very vitriol. I mean, he doesn't mean to, the excuse is I'm being very debatable, but the problem is he seems to have blinders on as to hear what I say, but I'm not open to what other people may have to say about that topic. I'm going to discredit that. There's no such thing as white privilege. There's no such thing as critical race. There's no such thing as microaggression, unconscious bias. Those are voodoo questions, and they will cause trouble. Don't you teach my children that. I don't want them to learn that. But look, Sonia is having an issue with her child right now, and the interrelationship with people that don't look like him and understanding that, and it's a stereotype based on history. So when we talk about critical race, I'm going to try and make it as clear in what I told this gentleman today for this topic, because this is probably one of the most interesting, along with the others that we've mentioned. My focus and interest have been, or just exploring, is Marxism, feminism, critical race theory, liberalism, and progressionism. That also can be part of this. You have a wonderful movie, by the way, next week that you're going to be using, and I'm going to get to that, that you're going to see where these are all some kind of way going to fit in if you choose to use them for your final paper. But you have to have people that are certified, trained, perhaps facilitators. Don't let a group go off, because what's happened is there have been perhaps people, and based on their own historical trauma, family lived experiences, perhaps harmed, and they'll say, yeah, white people did that. Yes, it was perhaps a group of white people. I'm always advocate, don't put everybody in the basket, because not every white person did harm to the Wall Street riot massacre. It was a group of people. When you say, when people articulate broadly like that, all white people are bad, all white people are evil, that's not a true statement. And I am going to, yes, it's recorded. I'm saying it right now. That's not true. But that's not what people have heard, because it's already, the bad message has been out there. Maybe 2 or 3. My own personal experience, I am a federal whistleblower. 2003 through 2006, I fought my own case. And I did win, but it was 4 white male men, Southern Deep South, and I was on a special period of my federal job, and I experienced the worst racism after 9/11. There's other deep depths of the events that occurred, but ultimately, when everything came to a head, it was based on discrimination based on race, and even treatment of how hostile, work environment. I could not excel as the others in the office, because one of the supervisors, instead of giving me assignments to do the work, he was giving me tests to test my mathematical ability. I was the only Black with one other Black member in an all-white office. And these all came out, and I didn't know, but you can't do that to a person. That was distinguishing me differently. My testimony and spiritual testimony on that was, I did at one point, and it being the South, very limited. It wasn't my college days, but this is, my adult days, more seasoned. I walked away from that while I was in the conflict saying, I'll never trust. This is so painful. Why are they treating me this way? It's because of my skin. There was a lot of on confidence, loss of confidence, even in myself, my image, my abilities. And I said, I'll never let that happen to me again. But let me tell you something. I don't know what's going on. My phone is doing weird things here. I'm sorry, here, excuse me. Anyway, the long of the short of the story, the short of the long of the story is God helped me. This is where God intervened and said, the Holy Spirit, I'll say through the Holy Spirit, Nona, wait a minute, let's put this in perspective. Not all, and a lot of folks, white and black, they say, oh, that's the way those folks are in that part of the country. Or that's the way, they are. But all of them, that's why, but I had to remind, and I'm so glad God had my heart, because I said, no, it's not all white people that did that in this city, in that location. It was 4 men that did a harm. It was 4 men based on their ugly, but that does not put everyone in that pocket. Critical race, therefore, the theory simply stating, if I think Maria is less than me, I mean, this is getting biblical. If I think Maria is less than me and I treat her less and I think I am more superior, I don't care. You don't have to be white and black. I'm saying I'm black, and Maria, are you okay with me using you as an example?
Yes, ma'am.
But I say, Maria, no, you go sit over there. You don't sit anywhere else, but you sit over there in that room, that chair. Don't sit in any other chairs. And it could be because of her ethnic background, but it could be her financial. It could be her image. She may not have Gucci clothes. Doesn't look like Saks Fifth Avenue. And I'm making some stereotypes about her and her image, what I see. It's not what I don't know about her, but it's what I see. And I have made those suppositions about her. And I'm going to say I am much better than her. That is all critical race theory is talking about. And it originated in some of the research and even how I became known of it with my academic work, sociology also, is it really came out of Southeast Asia and the native, the Indian, called Indians. We're talking Southeast Asian Indians. And the fact that they were the caste system, this goes back to Gandhi and all the challenges that are there, perhaps even apartheid, and how de Klerk and South Africans and the black Africans had the challenges that they weren't even recognized. That's where it's saying there's a problem, but it does no way mean that white people, all white people have put a mandate that all black people should be treated a certain way. It is not just a black and white thing, and that's what I think that has been occurring. But it's simply saying we got to be careful that we do not, even ourselves, feel that we are superior over another group or individuals. That's simply what critical race is saying. And then Marxism aligns with that, just as Sonia or Danielle was saying, because of the again, haves and haves not, and the fear of what can occur with that. So Danielle, I'm really looking forward to reading your paper, and I'm certain with all the rest of you too. But I hope that helps with I got on my soapbox, but I mean, if I could get on CNN, those are the things that I would say. We got to stop the mess, and we got to take better care of one another, and we got to get a good message out, because there's nothing that is literal, but I believe it's some of that. Daniel, I appreciate you sharing your family experience or your education from a familial background, because really that's where a lot of this comes from, be it any of us, that it's like what we were taught, and it may not be always from our parents. It could be the church, it could be the classroom, it could be those personal, very close friends, and you've gotten so close to them, and someone starts sharing like, well, we don't do that, and we want to have friends, we want to be liked, and so, well, I better do like XYZ friend. They say we don't do that. I can align with her because, yeah, but the message can be really liquidated where it becomes this harm that has occurred there too. So any questions on that, or what do you think about that?
So you're going to tell us about our movie next week?
Oh, you want to know about the movie? Okay, so the discussion, you're going to do the current event, and you guys have done well, but just follow the prompts that's there. That's group discussion for module 6, and then I'll get back to let's get to the next week. So next week, it's the big one, and you're just going to have a closure of the just everything you've learned collectively, concertedly, and that's why I really advocate. You've heard me mention, be very detailed, justify, ask why, ask those compelling questions to one another. So next week, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it because this has been a great class, even though we've had challenges, like I said, the medical and individual challenges, unforeseen. Your movie is going to be Hidden Figures. And I see some head nodding. Tammy, have you seen it? I know you're on virtual.
I have, and it's already in the course materials that's the movie for the final movie. So I already knew.
So anyway, for next week, and the reason I want to share this with you is because everything is going to be cumulative, and you've had for the last few film analysis that you've done, you've had two theories that you had to align with the movie. And with it, you had to define the tenets of the movie, who the author, the creator of the theory was, the year. Let me say it. I'm knocking on my hear me now. Hear me now. The year. Some people did not put the year. That's a points miss. But you have to do the year of the theorist, who the theorist was, the primary tenets or assumptions of the theory, and then you had an opportunity to use the analysis you showed comparison of that theory in action in the movies, and you all have done great. I tell you what, for this to be such a integrated class between master's and doctorate students, a good majority, I'd say 95% have done well. Even it's like I didn't have to tell you all, but I'm seeing the scene cited scene numbers and how you cite for the movie of where the particular scene was that you're either quoting or discussing in your citations. And so you're doing well with that. But that's how you're going to lift out. You're going to do the same thing. But for next week, you are going to be looking at 4 theories. You're going to have a theory 1, and then you're going to have theory 2. So you've got to do exactly what I told you that I've been equipping, and hopefully you're preparing you for this moment in time next week. A brief summary of it, key points, year, who the theorist was, your analysis, and it's not just saying, oh, and by the way, the introduction. Some people wrote wonderful. It made me want to go to the movie if I hadn't seen one, or go buy the movies, because wonderful synopsis. You all would have made great movie critics. But then at the end of that little bit of the synopsis, it was like, and I'm going to talk about, critical race theory and Aristotle's rhetoric. And it's like, well, what about that? So simply talk about something about groups, like, this is the movie synopsis, and I included groupthink. This is groupthink is, and then the definition of groupthink, how it impacts, the communication dynamics. Maybe some brief highlights, just something, a snippet of what the overview of it. Like I said, groupthink is the impact of communication and how perhaps in a group situation, the group may perhaps create a environment or communication where another individual feels, defeated, bullied, badgered down. They're not feeling like their contribution of the communication or the activity counts. Aristotle rhetoric. Aristotle talks about how important communication is and the persuasiveness. That's all you're saying. And that's what this paper is going to talk about. For this, you may have those are two, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. But you may say this paper, the purpose of this paper is to discuss hidden figures, blah, 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 blah. This is what occurred. Or you may say hidden figures. For this paper, I've chosen hidden figures. This is what happened. Therefore, I'm using these theories. And then in this case, you're going to do the same thing. It's going to be 4, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 theories. Now this is where it's going to get that. So you know how to refute, do your summary, because you've been exercising that. And then you've been able to identify how the movie interrelates with elements of the theories, tenets or assumptions. Guess what? Then you're going to move into, you got to explain the weakness of that theory as you introduce theory 2. So you have theory 1. This is all about it. It's a great theory, accommodation theory, accommodation communication theory, but then you may find that there's another theory. And I think, by the way, I don't think you go by that far that back. Let's see, it's going to be modules 2 through 5. So you get to have your whole buffet of theories. Don't pick something you haven't been already working on. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, and I'm good with that. But don't copy from your other papers. Do not lift from that information and put it in. I want fresh information. Because guess what? Those papers, if you do that, your similarity scores are going to skyrocket. I want to, again, not only those that are on this talk tonight, but in the class as a whole, I commend everyone. It's the very first class I have ever had that I have seen at a most 18%. Maybe there's been an outlier of 21, but there's been other classes I've had as much as 75, 60, 50% similarity scores, and they usually are where someone has lifted work either from someone else or their previous, from a repeat. If they've had to repeat class, do not do that. But I don't think I have to worry about that because, like I said, your similarity scores have been exceptionally low. But just, you can refer to those papers and you may even be able to restate it because, the theory is a theory is a theory. Your references, you're going to have your scores. When you check your similarity scores, your references may bump it up. If you've got 15, my dissertation students, if you've got 20, your score may be going up, but that's where you check it. And if you can see it's all of the references and your citation, West and Turner, 2018, those are things that you can't help. There's a term they use, but they're going to be the same. Everyone's going to have the same. Your cover paper may hit a similarity, but everybody's going to have the title. Everybody's going to have certain, if you quote something. And if you quote, be sure you use a page number and put those quotation marks where you're lifting it from the direct information from the book. So again, introduction, the body of it, which encompasses a concise, coherent application of the chosen theories you choose. Choose that first one, make it sound really good, and then say, however, if I bring in Aristotle's rhetoric that is stronger, let me use critical race and feminism theory. Feminist theory may be advantageous because these things and definition, and this is what the women went through, or the relationship with the men and the women. However, I would like to introduce, or you don't say I would like to, that's not academic, verbiage, but if we look at the critical race theory, it seems to have more strength and validity as application to whatever the scene or the event is than that of the previous accommodation communication theory. And therefore, your next thing is you're going to refute it. You're going to say, briefly summary of theory 2. You're going to introduce the theorist and follow. I'm giving you what you're going to see next week, kind of. So I don't know why. God, maybe because I had a hard day and I don't want to give you a blessing. But the whole point I'm trying to say is, if you follow this, the way I call it the prompt of your assignment instructions, just as I'm mentioning, you do your introduction, don't switch it. Some people put some stuff down up at the top and it's like, but where's your introduction? And sometimes there's not even an introduction. I'm saying just follow it just like you would a recipe when you're cooking, and you won't be in trouble. So you're moving down to refuting it. I think I have some people with a law background in the class. You know exactly. You've got your IRAC. What is the issue? What is the rule? So for those, and I had a little bit of law 2 years before transitioning to where the degrees I got, but I really love the IRAC. They call it IRAC. What is the issue? When we think top law, the issue is that someone caused a harm. The rule is homicide, the killing of another human being with malice aforethought. And then there's all parts in, and then the analysis. Well, how are you relating that issue with that rule of law? And then what is your conclusion? And that's where you can even, let's try and put that over into a theory. Theory is, and these are the elements of the theory, which would be the rules, or the issue, the issue is hidden figures. What you all tell me, what, because I know you saw the movie and I want to honor your time because I'm gonna get off real quick. But what would you say are the issues of hidden figures right away?
So I would tell you, you mean issues as it relates to the theories?
Yeah, but yeah, because I'm at the analysis part for the theory.
Okay.
Because but hidden figures, what are the things? It doesn't have to be issues, but what would, if you walked away and told someone, what was that movie about in Hidden Figures?
Mm-hmm.
It was about white males in a government agency who muted and silenced the voices and intelligence of Black women in aeronautics or mathematics, in the science field, who did not believe they were credible, who did not believe they were competent, and who did not believe they were qualified.
Okay.
Now,
all right. All right, stop. Enough. Good. Just for an example, because I we're getting. I want to honor your time, not unless if you have to go, then you can continue with your recording. So then apply that to the theory. Like I said, in law, it's a rule that the issue in law is, what was the issue? Something happened with a burglary. What's the rule of law that aligns with that? I want to liken that now to your film analysis that you're going to do, or your wrap up paper here. You just mentioned these are the issues in that, or the overview of what that movie's about. The next one is, then what would be the theories? Think of some theories that you think would be applicable. You don't have to go through the details of it, but we've talked about a few tonight. And there's no wrong answers. So real quick, what would be 2 or 3 theories?
Muted social exchange theory. I'm trying to think that would apply. I think the social exchange theory would apply well. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tammy.
No, go ahead. Maybe communication accommodation, possibly. I'm thinking
Definitely.
that's possible. That's one.
Yes, good. Group thing played in there. How the men acted in the engineer room.
That's possible. Yeah, that's a good one.
They made her different. They kind of rallied, almost like I won't say gang, but it's kind of like you all, we do this, but they made her feel like she wasn't even capable. The man, one of the men she was supposed to co-work with, I guess, and she wrote up her analysis or her calculations, and then he put his name on it. Go get your coffee somewhere else. Of course, that could be, make your coffee, or we're expecting you to make the coffee, but you don't get to drink it. So but then not just saying it, but then again, the analysis. And again, I'm going to use the relationship of legal. They told what it is. They've given the rule of it. For us in theory, we've told what the activity, the event was, and then you present the theory that you think may align with it, but then you have to do the analysis, justification. And it's not simply just what we said, muted theory, social accommodation theory, or the ones mentioned, groupthink, muted theory, political social theory. This is what it is. Boom. No, it's not all that's stated there. You have to show the interrelationship, and you're doing justification. You're showing that, and the whole goal is to show that you know how to apply the analysis, the application of the theory. This is real important as you move into even those, again, that are doctoral students and writing your final, doctoral dissertations and things. And then the conclusion, therefore, and that may be where so that's what you're going to do. We've talked, again, theory 1 to theory 2, the analysis of 2 with theory 3, analysis 2, excuse me. So that's analysis 1, refuting theory 1 and 2. Then you're going to move into analysis 2 with another theory. And then you're going to present that theory just as we've talked about. And then an explanation of theory and the strengths of the fourth theory. So you got 4, and it gets kind of complex. I mean, it's at a complex level, and it can be really overwhelming. And I know I empathize, so that's why I wanted to give you an overview so you can start thinking about it. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're refuting theory 2 with 4 theory, if I'm reading it right. But you'll see the detailed explanation, and then the conclusion, advocacy for your work. Perhaps what is it you glean from? What are your thoughts about it? I always, because like I said, we're ASCU Wildcats, and the mission of the school is not only, you've heard me say this, is not only to get an academic educational knowledge, but then how do we apply it with a Christian perspective too? And so I'll always welcome any spiritual thoughts there. And that's even for this week. I think there's some things you're going to integrate with your discussion. Use headings for each section. So make sure your headings are very clear, like the bullets above. Follow the instructions. Following that, your paper will be between 2,800 and 3,000 words, not counting your cover page. If you are under 3,000 or you go over, at least have the minimum. I mean, if you're 2,950, don't fuss over it. You've got too much work to do. If you go over 3,050 and have 50 instead of 3,000, I'm not going to count you off on that. Okay? Double space it. No change of font. Double space throughout. Make sure that all of your reference pages double space. Please look at APA 7th edition. And if you have any questions or even concerns or even need some kind of encouragement, or you say, no, let's Zoom. I did it with a couple of students this past week. I'll be more than happy to enjoy Zooming with you. I won't take a lot of time because I want you to really have you use it to apply it for your getting your head around this. But that's next week. I know you've got this week, but I just want you, because we may not meet next week. If I do, and those who want to come in, I'll be more than happy to do it. So are there any questions? Does that?
Okay, so I have a question. It's very helpful about the final week. And so since we have such a short, sort of
Yeah,
short turnaround,
exactly.
right?
That's why.
I know you mentioned don't lift your previous work, but aren't we free to use, components or parts of that previous work, as we prepare this final paper? Because
Yeah,
it's sort of a compilation of what we've done all through this course. Okay, so are you able to send an email with information for how to cite your own work so we're not plagiarizing?
Well, and that's why I was, Tammy, you were reading my mind, because I was just going to say, I want to look at the APA, because I know there's been changes from 6th to 7th edition. But I know in 6th edition, if you cited your work, oh, and by the way, if you have conversation that perhaps in your discussion that you want to, you won't say in this discussion, but you may cite something that was in the discussion, you can put that as a personal communication from that person. It's showing that you had a dialogue with that person, or the discussion in the discussion post.
Oh, that's good.
How would you cite them?
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a problem with it. And there was where you can cite your own work. Now, again, if it's 1 or 2 places, I'm not going to worry that much, not unless it is something that is against APA. But let me check on that.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Because remember, I sent you, I think you all an example last week. Something came up with, it was something, and I sent you an example of it, remember? And so, and by the way, did you see the communication I sent you on Google Scholar?
Oh yeah, I knew about Google Scholar. So yeah, but thank
That
you.
may help too on there. Okay. All right. So we're really running behind. I don't want to go past 7:30 for you, 6:30, 8:30 for y'all. But if there's no other questions, I do want to just encourage you for a spiritual reflection, your quiet time. If you don't have a routine daily word or some kind of Bible, devotion that you already use, or you may want to step away from it. I was compelled, I've been trying to apply something every week, be it the discussions, if you know, is creative with your group names, but with value, like you can go back and look at all of those, scripture references. But this week, the scripture chapter in particular, and I guess through verse 29, is 1 Samuel, the book of the Old Testament, 1 Samuel, chapter 25. And it's talking about a wonderful female character in the Bible, and that is Abigail. And Abigail, I'll just tell you overview a little bit, and I may have mentioned this when I started the class, but I'm going to reiterate it more with depth. But in 1 Samuel 25, it's a wonderful story, and it talks about one of submission and deliverance, kind of like what we're talking about tonight. Abigail is a lesser known heroine in the Bible, a humble woman who was married to a wealthy scoundrel, Nabal. And I think I may send you the link of Abigail's Arms. It's from the website, so you can read the synopsis of it. But the gist of the story is Nabal really had a poor relationship with David. He was prepared to him and David, King David, they just had fits. And Abigail was aware of that. And so David was prepared to go and kill her husband, Nabal. And Abigail, around verses, let me get it real quick. Around verse 18, and she knew this. If you get to verse 18, you'll see it says, "Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and two bottles of wine, 5 sheep ready to dress, 5 measures of parched corn, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on the donkey's asses," as it says there. She was preparing all of this food to go to King David and his army, which was prepared to go and kill her husband. This young lady, she gets on a donkey with all of that gear, and I think she had others that went with her, but she went to visit David and shared all of those resources with him. And part of it was her negotiation. I see it as an opportunity negotiation where she pleaded with him, please don't kill my husband. If these things happen, this will happen. This is how God will impact you. And therefore, David worked through resolution, and the story ends where he did not kill Nabal. And it's interesting, just a footnote, it's not part of what I want to talk about, but later on, Abigail marries David. That's a silly head scratcher. I wish I knew about that relationship. But if we apply this to this week that we're talking about, I see that as a feminism. I see other perhaps elements of the theories that we're talking about. Is one person perceiving the other one to be superior over another one? It's just food for thought. But I wanted to leave that as your spiritual reflection for this evening and for what we're talking about. So any questions on that? It's really a good story. It's turned out to be my favorite. I mean, I have really giants that I want to. I said when I go to heaven, I definitely want to talk to Paul and see how he changed as reconciliation. By the way, that's what my dissertation, a core of it is about, biblical, that hate is from the core of Genesis 1:1, and how Paul was against the Christians. He was not kind about how he killed people, but then he was able to spiritually reconcile himself and become the greatest peacemaker when we start seeing what he did, with the books in the Bible. And there's others that there, Paul, and then James. I want to talk with James. And then, there's a good old spiritual song, so when I get to heaven, I won't have a conversation. So if I find that YouTube, if you want to get motivated, I got another one called "I'm Only Human." I know I'm crazy. I must be getting tired. But those are things that there's a story, I'll tell it next time. Perhaps even I'll put a YouTube on there about "I'm Only Human." It's by Rag and Bones, but it's turned out to be one I use even in my teaching when I'm physically training. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, but we got to take care of each other. Otherwise, we can even self-destruct. We think we're hurting other people. We end up hurting ourselves. So I'd like to leave you on that note. Remember to pray for our class members, okay, that are hurting or in pain physically, perhaps losses. Tammy, it's good to see you tonight, and I hope you are doing well, and others that maybe have talked to me one-on-one. So, and you all charge me. It's been a long, tiring day, but I want you to know you all have blessed me tonight, and thank you for your transparency. Those that couldn't be with us, you're just as much appreciated, and I ask a special blessing on you all too. So let me close in a word of prayer. Most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you again every day that you wake us up. You give us what you've given, as we talked earlier. It's a bounty compared to perhaps some that don't have anything, or just things that are happening that people are lacking, even to the hospitals that are saturated, and people's kind of like no room at the end. And we lay those concerns nationally at your feet, and we ask you heal our land, Lord. And therefore we thank you for what you've given us. It may not be a lot, but it's more than perhaps someone else has. And so we don't want to ever take what blessings you give us for granted. Lord, we thank you for this day, and you got us to this point. I pray that you give the students that are here, as well as in the class that couldn't join us tonight, everything and all they need as they complete their wrapping up the last leg of this term. Help them be able to process, clear minds, be with their families, slow down the time, what they need. And Father, I just pray that you open their hearts and let them be prepared to receive the blessings that you want to give them. As always, I thank you for allowing me to be the shepherd, and allow me to please of just good stewardship in how I lead. That you give me the words that pleases you and that are important for them to accomplish their course as well as their academic dreams that they have. Give us good rest, Lord. Wake us up tomorrow, and we thank you in all you do. In thy name we pray. Amen. All right, ladies, you have a good
Amen. Thank you. Have a good rest of the week.
pleasure. Maria, it's good
Bye-bye.
seeing you. Danielle, Sonia, Tammy, you take care.
Hope you're doing good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
If you need anything, you know how to get me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Thank you.
you.